Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be creating 3 cards with brand new Hero Arts My Monthly Hero July 2021 products. I'm calling this the Mushroom Garden Scene cards. Everything definitely has a magical storybook type of feel to it. I'm using lots and lots of the products from the add-on release. All of my cards are only using add-ons. I do not receive the main kit. I know I get requests for that every month. I don't even receive the main kit, so I am not able to do any samples with that. I just want to make sure and clarify that up front. I am using lots of the add-ons. I absolutely adore the whole collection and I'm really excited to get started. We are going to be using the brand new Woodgrain bold print, which I think is going to be fantastic, not only for these kind of magical fairy, garden type of cards that I'm doing today, but all the time. I love a good wood grain. I love having options for wood grain. This is amazing. We are going to stamp this background on some smooth white cardstock using Distress Oxide ink in Ground Espresso. This is a nice deep dark color. I am using my Misty so that I can get good coverage because I stamped it twice. I'm using a Stamper's Secret tool to help press the lid of my Misty really well. You can find a link for that in the description below the video here on YouTube. This background measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. This is going to be an A2 sized card. In addition to the Ground Espresso that I used for stamping the wood grain pattern, we're going to also be using Gathered Twigs and Antique Linen Distress Oxide inks. We're going to start with our Antique Linen first and go ahead and kind of blend that all over the background. It will mute the lines of the wood grain just a little bit, but that is totally fine. I kind of prefer that look myself. If you are wanting the lines to stay a little bit more crisp, I would suggest ink blending your background first and then stamping over the top of that next. After I've done the antique linen, let's go ahead and grab some gathered twigs and ink blend that kind of around the perimeter of our background panel, leaving the center fairly light. A lot of that antique linen is gonna kind of go away, but I like starting with that little lighter highlight area because there will be a couple spots on the card where it will be lighter. Then I'm even going to go back with Ground Espresso and we are going to ink blend the edges to deepen and darken them. I started with the background stamping first because it's going to give me a much better idea of where everything is going to go, and that's going to come clear here in a minute when I die cut our fairy door and kind of play around with some of the other elements that I want to use for the card. You guys know that I love, love, love Hero Arts fancy dies. I love customizing them with markers. I love the detail of them. Those have been some probably of my most popular videos here on YouTube as far as sunflower cards and things like that, where I created arrangements where I die cut everything from white cardstock and colored it in with Copic markers. We're going to be doing that again today because I love the look. So this is the Fairy Doors Infinity Dies. You get all of these amazing sizes of doors, and then you get the components to decorate the door. That's going to be windows and hinges and the door lock, a door knocker. Just so amazing. I absolutely love this. I could see using this for lots of different kinds of cards. It doesn't have to be fairy doors as it's called. I think it could be really fun used with some other components as well. And I love that there's lots of sizes, all the way from a pretty little one to a much bigger one. And then all of the pieces, there's, I think, 4 window options. There's a key, there's lots of different hinges, 3 different hinges, and then the door lock and a door knocker. You get a lot. I love that whole group. So I'm kind of playing around with a few of the elements to see what I like, see what I want to use. You'll notice I did shift the door over to the right just a tad. It is not in the dead center of my landscape background. That was very much on purpose. Next is what I want to say is my favorite, but you may hear me say that a lot because I really love the add-ons, is the Mushroom and Ferns Fancy Dies. For me, I think that Hero Arts hit it out of the park. I love it. So I die cut everything from the Mushroom and Ferns from smooth white cardstock. I just put it in on a piece of white cardstock. This is 110 pound weight Neenah smooth white cardstock. Ran it through my die cutting machine, and I'm going to take my Copic markers and color everything in. I adore these mushrooms. You get 4 different mushrooms in this set, 3 different ferns. Really, really amazing. So I have listed my marker colors here on the screen. You can also find that information on my blog. I have listed them out next to each card. So if at any time you are wondering what colors exactly I use to color things in, you can find that information there. What I love about Copic markers is you are never going to pill the paper. If you go back and you're like, oh, I want to deepen and darken that like I'm doing right now, you can absolutely do that. You can add more shading, add more color, deepen, darken it, whatever you want to do there. So there is our first mushroom. I'm going to color my second little mushroom here. I love that you see more of the underside of this one. And the coloring for this card definitely took a little bit of work. Lots of coloring today. I don't always have maybe this much coloring, but these cards all came together in one afternoon. I know I get asked a lot how long it takes me to create, and I'm always terrible about like keeping track of that. There's generally a lot of interruptions in my day. I often don't create everything in a single day. In this case, I did. I did not start until probably, I want to say between 12 and 1, the day I created all of these or made all these. And I made them start to finish before I think I was finished about 5:30. But please keep in mind, I did have several big interruptions during that time. And I will say too, I had thought about what I wanted to create prior to starting. One other thing is I had started another card while I was doing these and I just didn't love it. And so I set it aside. It's with other add-ons from the release, and I may revisit that a little bit later and see if I can rework it and make it into something I like. So I love these ferns. I think this set, this Mushroom and Ferns Fancy Dies set, is a great addition. If you've got some of the other, like the sunflowers and things, the honey pot, all of that stuff from Hero Arts past add-on releases, which are all still available. That's one of the things I love about the add-ons, is that they will remain available until they're discontinued, you know, but they're going to come back in stock. The main kit does not. And that's one of the things I love about working with the add-ons. So maybe if you see something a little bit later and you don't catch it right when it comes out, you're still able to pick it up, which I think is really awesome. Now, when I am coloring with Copic markers and I use a glass work surface here, this is the Tim Holtz glass mat, I do take a little alcohol wipe and clean up because the markers are getting on my work surface. And that means that if I would say color the red part of the mushroom, and then I would take the more yellowish colors and I would accidentally pick up some of that color, you could smear it into what you're coloring and it's going to be really hard to fix that. I generally will clean my work surface between switching colors or switching images, whatever works the easiest, just so that I am not picking up that excess color and ruining something that I've spent all the time coloring. I like those little alcohol swabs. They just come in little packs and I can take it, clean my work surface, and get right back to work really fast. I'm using a couple of different green color combinations for my ferns. I have listed all those colors. I will tell you the brighter green color is G24 and 28, and the more yellow green is YG93, 95, 97, 99, some combination of those. In some cases, all of those. The bigger fern, I think I used all of those. Just kind of depended on how I felt the coloring was going. And I know I speed up the video quite a bit just so we can get through it and we're not sitting here for the hours it takes me to create these cards, but the coloring did go fairly quickly. So let's take our background now. I did play around with multiple sentiments trying to figure out what I want to use. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more here in a second. I do want to die cut my window from my door, so I'm going to run that over to my die cutting machine, and that's because it won't die cut the entire shape. It's going to die cut the inserts for the window, but it's going to leave the casing for the window. And I'm going to take a dark marker, I took E49, and color over that to give a little more definition to the window casing. Now we want to add hinges. I really contemplated whether I wanted to use 1 or 2 here, and ultimately I decided to use 2. These are die cut from Lawn Fawn Gold Metallic cardstock. I am going to add 2 of those to that left side of the door. Now this makes the door actually work. The hinges don't, but the die does hinge open. So if you want this to be an interactive element, you could totally do that. You could hide a sentiment, you could hide extra images inside. I did not today. I kept my card fairly flat. Oh, and one other note, I completely forgot to mention this. So you can see around the door that it's a little bit darker. I took some Post-it notes and masked off the rest of the area. You could see that earlier in the video. I just forgot to mention it. I did this on purpose to give a little more definition to the edges of the door, and then I took that ground espresso and inked around that edge just a little bit. Now I am going to start adhering all of my images to make my fairy garden. Now I loved everything up until this point. There is a stamp set in the release, the Meadow Heroscape. So another amazing Heroscape. Hero Arts does these so well. That has a couple of little fairies in it, and I really thought that I might use the fairies for my card. I wanted to have some sort of fairy or something on my card, and they just didn't work size-wise. To me, it wasn't visually what I wanted, and I was a little bit bummed because I absolutely was loving how everything was turning out here. And so I went to my stash, and you're going to see that I am going to pull a product and I'm going to customize it to make it work with my scene. And I really think that that one little addition really just made this whole scene come to life. And I'm thrilled with it, and I hope you guys love it too. You'll notice that I only did 2 of that fern. That fern was probably my favorite fern from the collection. I did die cut and color 2 of those. There's one on the left, there's a part of one over on the right. What I trimmed off over on the right, I actually just reused part of that extra over here so that none of it really went to waste, and it fills in a little bit more greenery along the left side. We're adding our door lock, the little knocker below the window, the door knocker there. And I'm going to trim off anything hanging off the edge. There is not a lot, it's just a little bit here and there. And then I noticed my mushroom wasn't glued all the way down, so I added a little extra liquid glue and some tweezers to hold that in place. So I did stamp these fairies. Don't fear, we're going to use them later. Now I just showed really quickly, I know, this fairy window fancy die. This is not from this add-on release. This is from, I can't remember exactly when. It's been a while. I do think it was from a My Monthly Hero release. Maybe, like I said, I can't remember. But there's a fairy in it, and I felt the size of her was perfect, but she's part of a frame. So I'm very carefully taking my scissors and trimming her out. I know a lot of this was off camera because My camera was zoomed in way too much from the coloring and the assembly, and I didn't notice, but literally it's just cutting her out. So there she is. I love her. I think she's going to look adorable sitting on that mushroom, and the size and scale works much better than the little teeny tiny fairies. So I am going to go ahead and color her in. I have left that in the video so you can see how I customized her, how I worked fairly slow trying to get it just so. I ended up really liking this. It did take a little bit of effort to kind of try to figure out how to color her, but I think in the end it was worth it. So I did skin first. We're going to go in and add some hair. Looks like the breeze is blowing it. And because she is situated sitting on a branch in the fairy window fancy die she comes in, it's going to work to have her sit on this mushroom. We're going to start with a very light color for her dress, and that's good because I need to kind of get her knee in that she has her arm sitting on. This is going to take a bit of work to get this dress the way I want it, but I think it'll be fine. I'm using B60, 63, and 66 for her dress. The colors are pretty forgiving, and you can see I went back over things quite a bit, making this work. Look how cute! And see where the tip of her toe is cut off, and then also the hand that she's bracing herself on. Those can both be hidden, and I will be hiding kind of both of those in the card. Now her wings, part of these will get cut off. I did end up coloring all of them in because you can see a little bit, but I'm using a combination of the purples, and then I did pull in some blue greens, some nice aqua-ish tones for that. And I'm really excited. For me, it was the size and the scale that really worked in favor here. So if you have something similar, I really love that. And then this butterfly is actually from another Hero Arts fancy die set. This is going to be the Bouquet Accessories fancy dies, which is one of my favorites. I wanted something else up high. We've got a lot going on down low and a lot over on the left side. So I pulled a butterfly because I ended up liking Fluttering By to Say Hello from the Hero Meadowscape set. And so that is kind of where the inspiration for adding these extra elements that are not part of this month's release. But I always try to show you guys in almost all of my videos, pulling things from my stash and using them with the new products. Again, I love extending the life of the products I've already invested in, and things, you know, getting more use out of them, finding new ways to use them, finding ways to make them new again. And I hope you guys love that as well. So there is my butterfly. I colored the body brown first. I didn't like that, so I just went over it with a warm gray marker. And then I'm going to add a little detail with a white pen, adding some little dots and things just to dress up my butterfly a little bit more. We are coming up on being able to almost finish this card. We have our sentiment to add, and then we are going to adhere the whole panel to our card, but we need to do something back behind that window, I feel, to give it a little bit more interest. So I will be inking my card base with a little Wild Honey Distress Oxide ink, very, very light inking to make it look like there's a light on at home in this fairy house. So this sentiment is from the Meadow Heroscape set. This is a 6x8 set. There are coordinating dies, and this set's going to get lots of love in my next two cards because I love it, and I know you guys are going to love it too. If you are a fan of the Heroscape sets from Hero Arts, This is an amazing addition to the collection. I stamped the Fluttering By to Say Hello with the embossing and watermark ink from Hero Arts, and I'm heat embossing with Hero Arts white embossing powder, so it's a nice bright white against the wood grain of our fairy house. And then it's finishing detail time. We have our card base. I didn't really want to add extra paper to my card, and I also cleaned up my work surface. I did not want to get any ink on my card itself. And then we're just going to pop our little scene, pardon me, on top of that. I'm placing some adhesive then on the back, being sure to avoid the window, and placing it right on my side fold card base. So this is a landscape style scene card. And then I thought we needed to finish a fairy card with a scattering of some sparkly like fairy dust. So I just have a combination of a couple of products here. I think they're called, let's see. These are some Lucy's Little Things Sprinkles Shooting Stars, which I thought worked nice. Then some Lucy's Little Things Itty Bitty Matte Gold Stars, and then of course a little red heart by the sentiment there. But we're just going to put a whole bunch of these little sparklies all over. I like how they add to the magical look and feeling of this card design. And that is going to finish up our first card using add-ons from the My Monthly Hero July 2021 release. Our next card is going to feature another favorite product. I feel like I'm going to say that for everything. This is the Mushroom Forest Fancy Die. So it creates this beautiful window. You can use it either like I did here out of a background panel. This is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch background panel, or you can use it with the oval die that it comes with to create more of a traditional frame. I like taking the inside piece and die cutting it from my card front and creating a frame that way. So we are going to die cut this from smooth white cardstock, and then much like our components from the Mushrooms and Ferns Fancy Dies, we're going to color these in with Copic markers, but we're going to kind of be careful to stick to just the outer edges of this, and then we're going to build a beautiful Meadow Heroscape in the background. Now the fairies, the little fairies from the Meadow Heroscape that I tried to use for the first card are going to come in handy here because I'm actually going to use them for this card design. And I really love how the frame comes alive with a little bit of coloring. And you could do any of your favorite coloring medium. I like Copics for this, but I have also used watercolor markers like either Zigs or Tombos for other similar style of cards. I just really love kind of using your imagination and coloring in all of these areas to really make a frame pop. So I've got some mushrooms there along the right side. I'm going to move up towards the tree and the leaves and then some grass down along the bottom. Just kind of filling in all those little bits and pieces. It doesn't have to be super precise. The nature of what we're coloring here, since there aren't any, absolute lines, there really is no right or wrong. I'm using E55 and 57 for my tree branches, G24 and 28 for leaves. In fact, I think any of the greenery on this was colored with G24 and 28. I didn't use my other green color combination for anything around this frame. I will use them on the next one for my third and final card today, which I will get to here in a minute. Same colors for the mushrooms. I love all the pop of red. I really think it makes the mushrooms pop along the edges, and so I like to kind of stick to those for that part of the image, especially with so much green and things for the rest of the design. You'll notice that I'm going to do pops of yellow in the Meadow Heroscape. I originally thought I would try to use some reds for some of the flowers and things, but I realized pretty quickly that that's a lot of red, and I felt like it needed something else so that it would stand out more against this beautiful frame. Got a couple more little places to color in here, and then we'll add some little highlights to our mushrooms with a white pen, and then start building our Meadow Heroscape. So I know I mentioned a little earlier, but the Meadow Heroscape is gonna have a nice supporting role in both this card and my next one. I absolutely love it. I think the Heroscapes are brilliant. They are such a great way to add interest to your cards so quick. They're layering stamps. They instantly build background scenes and images that are just phenomenal. And then this Meadow Heroscape has a lot of really fantastic sentiments in it. Nice basics like happy birthday and thank you. And then of course the fluttering by to say hello that I used for my first card. The you are beautiful that we're going to use for this card, and also you make my heart flutter. Here are those white pen details I was talking about. I'm just going to add those to my mushrooms for a little bit more interest. I even did kind of what I thought was some rocks that some of those mushrooms are around. So I have my background panel in my Misty, and I'm going to start with the biggest piece of the Meadow Heroscape, and I am using some Simon Says Stamp Willow ink. I did find that I got a better impression no matter what ink I used if I stamped it twice, just to get some good coverage. That's why I'm using my Misty. That will kind of soften and lighten as the ink dries and absorbs into the cardstock. That was a dye ink that I used. I am going to clean my stamp. I'm going to leave my paper right where it is in my Misty and grab the next layer. So a lot of times with the layering stamps, the next layer you may want to do in like a darker shade of green in this instance or something. I actually ended up using some black ink, the intensified black ink from Hero Arts to be specific, which is an ink for Copic coloring. And I chose it because there are a few little places in this that are not going to be layered with extra color, and I thought that it would be fun to color them in and add a little bit more interest to my background. You would think the black would be really kind of harsh maybe. I was a little worried about it, but I ended up absolutely loving it because it really pulls in the detail of this Hero Meadowscape. Now, after I have stamped that and cleaned my stamp, I'm going to take the third and final layer, and it lines up easily with all of these little flowering pieces. You'll notice the mushrooms don't have a layer as far as that goes. So I am adding my color to everything with yellow. I thought yellow would be a nice complementary color to this design. And this is the Butter Bar ink from Hero Arts. I am going to take some Copic markers now and color in some of those remaining mushrooms, same colors that I used for any of the die cut mushrooms. And then I'm also going to take my G28 marker and deepen and darken some of the green areas for added interest. So one of the reasons that I chose that black ink that's great for Copic coloring is because it's not going to bleed when I bring the alcohol ink marker to it. It's really subtle, but I like that little extra bit of shading, and I colored super fast. So if this was going to be on a card base without a frame color covering it, you could see how it really adds a lot. But look how beautiful that looks in the background of our little kind of frame here, that mushroom frame. I love it. We're going to take some Hero Hues Splash Reactive ink and very lightly add some ink to the top part of the card. I am not masking anything off. I'm not going to bring my blending brush too far down into what I just stamped, but I want to give that illusion of a blue sky. I want you to be looking through like the trees and the mushrooms, like in this fairy forest. That's my story in my head, and looking back through into like this meadow in the background. And I want to have this really pretty blue sky. Just one color of ink here, I think, is all I ended up using. I don't think I pulled in any blue Hawaii. I'm going to clean my work surface, and then I want to pop up my frame with a little foam adhesive. I think that little bit of dimension will add so much nice interest. And then I did get a little ink smudge down here in the bottom right corner, and I wanted to keep this in the video. I'm using a Tombow Mono eraser, sand eraser, to remove that so that I don't completely ruin my frame. I probably should have washed my hands. I must have got it into some ink. Here are my little fairies. I like how one kind of is hovering or standing up here on this tall mushroom, and then the other one's going to be floating back here in the background right above where we are going to stamp "You Are Beautiful," our sentiment for this card. I am going to take my panel and place it in my MISTI and then stamp my sentiment right there. I want to make sure that I get it lined up right where I want it to go. So I'm going to play around with this a little. You will notice the Meadow Heroscape, pardon me, wasn't stamped along the very bottom edge of my panel. That was on purpose. I wanted as much of it to be visible in the frame as possible. And so I ended up bringing it up a little bit, but I kind of still didn't think that it fit super great. So I'll trim down my background panel a little bit so that I can have that positioned exactly where I want it to go. I stamped my sentiment with a black ink so it shows up great in my scene. I also think it ties in nice to our little fairies that we're going to add to our card. I trimmed off a little bit of excess there. We are going to back our frame now with that foam adhesive. It looks great adhered directly to the background, but I love the foam adhesive for just that tiny bit of dimension that it gives. I want to try to get this lined up perfectly. Now I'm going to glue my little fairies in place. I did color in their wings with some Copic markers, just those same blue markers. I kind of think it looks lavender. It's one of my favorite color combinations for purples, B60, 63, and 66. And then I'm going to apply some Nouveau Crystal drops in White Blizzard, which is an iridescent, sparkly Nouveau Crystal drop, so their wings are going to have that sparkly quality to them. When dry, it'll dry completely clear, so you'll see that little touch of color in the background, which I love. The last thing that I'm going to do for this card, and I didn't realize I wanted to add it until I got to this point, I felt like I needed a little something else. Maybe a little bit more color brought in, a little bit more movement. And I'm going to take the 3 butterfly images from the Meadow Heroscape. We are going to stamp those. The first one I stamped with Bubblegum Hero Arts ink. The next one we are going to stamp with Butter Bar. And then the third one, I think I stamped it with purple. I stamped it with Orchid. And I changed my mind and actually stamped it with Strawberry again. And then we're going to die cut them with the coordinating dies. So the Meadow Heroscape has the border for the meadow that you're building. You could die cut that from a separate piece of cardstock if you wanted to. It has a mushroom, 3 butterflies, the fairies, and a gnome. So you can die cut those coordinating images. After I die cut my butterflies, I did take a fine tip black pen and draw in the body and the antenna to give my butterflies a little bit more depth and dimension. And then we're simply going to glue these in place. And I was amazed at what a difference these 3 tiny little butterflies add to my scene. I think they just add more of that meadow magical quality. So I loved the Meadow Heroscape so much that I actually ended up opting to use it again in much the same way as this card for our third card, but we're going to switch up our frame, our window die that we're going to use, as well as the images. And I love that it really shows how the versatility, and you can use it in many, many ways. Oh, and I did forget to mention, I did add a little shading to my yellow and red butterflies with a darker Copic marker. So YR23 for the yellow and R39 for the red. Nothing for the pink, that one's pretty little, but I liked the little bit of shading here. I didn't even blend it out, just one color and done. I love these cards. I think they're really, really fun. So this time we are going to focus on the Forest Vines window die and the Little Red Riding Hood stamp set, but we're going to build that same background with our Meadow Heroscape. Much like our Mushroom Forest Fancy Die, I die cut this panel from smooth white cardstock. Now I did use a little bit smaller panel for this card. This is a 4 by 5¼ inch background, and it has a lot simpler coloring. We've got the vines hanging down. I am going to use both color combinations of green. And then we've got a little flower over on the left and 2 over on the right. I did more of like a little yellow sunflower and then a couple of little red flowers here. This is probably the simplest of the 3 designs, but I love how it turned out. I really, really do. Just really quick coloring. I only concentrated on the things that kind of stick out in the window. And then we do want to build the Meadow Heroscape for the background again, because I love that it feels like you're looking through this frame, this window, whatever, into the meadow, and you get to see the cute scene. So one of the things that I really wanted to focus on, and it's such a small thing, but in the Little Red Riding Hood stamp set, there is a little wolf that's peeking. It's only his head and his paws, and I wanted him to be peeking in the frame. And so you're going to see that here as I stamp and color those. So here is the Meadow Heroscape. Exactly like before, I am going to stamp it with the same colors of ink. I'm going to add some shading with the same markers. Everything about this is exactly the same. I thought it worked really well before, and I thought it would work here again. I want it to be muted. I want it to blend, but still be a great supporting cast, because I want the Little Red Riding Hood to really be the standout here. That's going to be our big pop of color for this card. This frame is much smaller. I moved my background up a little bit. I think, again, it probably didn't fit exactly. I ended up having to trim it down more, but I just used the Forest Vines window die as a guide to kind of know where exactly I wanted to stamp that, so that we get the most of that meadow that we can from this scene and still yet not see that white border down along the bottom edge. I did go with yellow again for my background color, because Little Red Riding Hood is going to be the focal point with all of the red. I love that, how pretty. Again, a little splash reactive ink, really quick, very light. It's super quick in sped up motion. Okay, let's stamp our remaining images. I guess first let's stamp a sentiment right below our window frame, sending a little hello. That is from the Little Red Riding Hood stamp set. The other sentiments, you're so cute, I could eat you up. Don't let the big bad wolf get you, and I miss you, Grandma. Really, really cute. I like the sending a little hello, as it really makes it versatile to work for lots of things. These cards will be going out in this week's Mail It Monday, which that post is coming tomorrow with the update of who all is getting cards this week. So definitely stay tuned for that. I did add my little bit of shading there. Anything that peeks through, I want it to be visible. And I'm going to grab a scrap of cardstock. I'm looking on my desk to see what we have. You can see I have this little scrap here. We're going to stamp Little Red Riding Hood, the butterfly, and then the peking wolf from the Little Red Riding Hood stamp set using our Hero Arts Intensified black ink. And then we're going to color everything in with Copic markers. It has been a minute since I have colored with Copic markers. So this was really fun for me today. I go in phases. You guys probably do too. I love all of my coloring mediums really probably equally. So it was really nice to kind of revisit this. It was nice to not do no line coloring. Sometimes you just don't feel like it. And I really liked this. I would probably not do no line coloring for any of these images. They're pretty small. They're pretty detailed. I like the black outline for these. So I'm going to give her little cape and hood and dress a nice first layer of color, if you will. I know this is a pretty small image, but I think one of the things I really like is I ended up going back in and just kind of drawing in some more dark areas that I'll blend out a little bit more, giving a little bit more movement and interest to her clothing. I'll zoom in just a little bit. Let's do her hair and the peking wolf image the same. That's E55 and 57 with R20 for some pink on the cheeks and insides of the ears. And then we've got her boots, which I'm going to use warm grays for. And then her basket of flowers and the flower in her hand, which are all going to be kind of more along the neutrals with yellows and browns and things like that. I will tell you that my video camera cut off after I got most of this done. I got all the coloring in, so you're not going to see me actually assemble the frame on the background and put the images in the frame, but hopefully you can imagine that. I'm sorry about that. I'm really excited. My new video camera is ordered. It'll be a little bit, I think, before it's here yet, so that is coming. Hopefully it will help with lives and all of that. I'm very excited about all of that. But I am sorry that it cut out for this part of the assembly. And like I said, I hope you can just imagine the rest of that being put together, because it's simply just gluing it all in place. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video featuring the July 2021 My Monthly Hero add-ons for some fairy and mushroom and meadow Heroscape garden type of cards. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Hero Arts My Monthly Hero from past months that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I appreciate each and every one of you, and we will catch you next time.